My dear friends, I'm really happy to start today's interview at the first day of spring and have it with my close friend with whom I've been working for 4 years at Astana International Financial Center. Let me introduce you to Akshu Campbell. Akshu, let me express my deepest gratitude to you that you agree to participate at my program and discuss the matters of the women leadership development in Central Asia. Today's program will be fully devoted to your professional and personal experience, changes that you've made to your experience to make it grow and extend. So, if you don't mind, I would like to start with my first question. I know that the most of your experience came from strategy formulation, business development cases, like you've been working in Qatar, in Astana International Financial Center. And recently I came across with one research paper that described the differences in strategy formulation based on the gender diversity. And taking into consideration your experience, what do you think? Are there any differences how men formulate strategy or how the strategy formulated by a woman? So what are your observations?
Yeah, thank you, Aishan. Firstly, really pleased to be here talking to you. I know we talk so much, but it's really fantastic to be talking to you on this platform. And I'd like to congratulate you on taking on this excellent initiative. I think it's so needed to voice a lot of these, not only issues, but experiences, as you say, and learn from others' journeys. So congratulations and all the best on that. So in terms of your question, really, great observations. And I think so many studies are focused, especially now in the recent sort of decade or 2 decades, so many studies have been focused on really this issue of gender diversity. But I think there are so many differences, similarities when it comes to gender diversity in board composition. But I think those observations are not really conclusive because most, if not all, researchers and papers suggest further research. So, an interesting observation that I would say is, I was reading the Harvard Business Review, and this might talk about or provide some insight into why such observations, even, these papers focus a lot on such issues. So, its findings were that women are less assertive than men in one of the Harvard Business Review articles. Now, this could very well, work in some situations. And again, this is a generalized, some could argue it's a generalized statement. It could work well in some situations than others, and depending on what leadership style and might work in different areas. So what I would say is, there are differences and similarities. And the implications really vary on different, depending on the culture, the work style and leadership style that's required. But I think so much further research is needed to frame any conclusive sort of responses to that. But what I would like to really conclude this, my answer is really to say that yes, gender diversity receives a lot of attention, which is much needed. But I think, especially in this day and age, we do need to focus a lot on different diversity, so age diversity, thought diversity. So really bringing in that different perspectives to enrich the board and the strategy decisions that that board make, and therefore the strategy formulation, which will be implemented.
Thank you, Akshu. I would like to just elaborate on this a little bit further. You know what I've noticed? That I also been a part of the working group on the strategy formulation, on the business development discussion. And what I've noticed for myself that first, there is not many women who participate in such kind of discussion. And even if they participate, they are reluctant maybe or not active in strategy formulation, but they're more active and applicable in strategy implementation matters. So what do you think? Why is that? How to change this trend?
Yeah, no, that's such an interesting observation, I think. And in my view, it could be, these are disparities that we constantly see. And in some geographical areas, it's more than the others. And, some workplaces have a lot of sort of concerted efforts to narrow that disparity. But I think this could be a symptomatic of that very existing disparity that we see in gender, and potentially not having equal opportunities. So women, of course, there are lots of different challenges when we talk about women's career progression. There are so many limitations when it comes to women's career progression. And sometimes there are difficult choices that, especially within my friends circle and just my professional network, very challenging, difficult decisions that as a woman you might have to make. So for instance, you have these family planning, it might be restricted because you want to focus on career progression. That might be a very difficult decision that one might take. But it really, I think, boils down to workplaces being inclusive. And I think it is improving, and there are positives. We've seen statistics improve overall globally, but I think some countries or regions need more concerted efforts than the others. But there are lots of positives. Like this issue keeps bringing, keep getting brought up, like, our discussion here and so many others that are focused on this very issue or even a challenge. So I think there are positives. While it might seem like women are really looking at strategy implementation rather than strategy formulation, because as a result, this really tends to happen at board levels or executive management levels. So the very fact that women cannot necessarily progress up in their career because of the challenges might be one of the cases. And more work and focus has been, I think, increasingly being focused on this area. I think it's only a matter of time that I hope this will improve. And that
Thank
we
you.
see more and more women in strategy formulation, not just implementation.
Thank you, Akshu, for such a detailed answer. And now I would like to turn and discuss that some recent changes that happened in your professional development. I know that you just like at the end of December you started your master degree in social innovation. It's quite interesting sphere because I've just read a little bit more about this sphere after the discussion with you, and especially taking into for consideration the fact that female entrepreneurs are key drivers in social innovation, especially in the emerging markets, economies. So my question, after the graduation, what do you think? Which fields of society matters you would like to apply your knowledge that you gain?
Yeah, thanks, Arjan. No, this has been, a few years of reflection to really come to this decision and apply. And I'm really excited to be pursuing this master's in social innovation. So, firstly, what really motivated me? I come from India. I've spent most of my life outside of India, but again, they have been developing countries. So, one thing that has really stood out for me, even when I visit India, is, and especially in the last 2 decades, India has been developing rapidly, both positively and negatively. And I think this is quite similar with other developing countries as well, especially some of the fast growing economies. So while, I say both positively and negatively, because while economic growth, I mean, while countries have really enjoyed from the benefits of economic growth, it has also provided that sort of attractive proposition for rural population to then move into cities that are seeing these growing economic conditions in the hope or the prospects of better jobs, better livelihoods. And then what has tended to happen, especially, speaking about my own home country, is you see a lot of migrants, even local migrants, low skilled workers that move from very rural villages in India to cities in the hope of better livelihood. But the prospects are limited because these developments have happened for high skilled labor. So what we're seeing is while the middle class middle class is moving up to the wealthier individuals, these countries, especially in India, the wealth gap has really increased. So we're seeing more and more slums increasing, the number of slums and the conditions really worsening. So really, this is what, has always stood out for me. And this is one of the motivating factors for me to really go into details of why such, we see a lot of growth, economic growth. Everyone seems to be having somewhat of a comfortable life, good life, really luxurious life, but we see a really contrasting end on the other end of the society. So that has always stood out for me, especially from my hometown. And it's quite similar when I've traveled or lived in other countries. So my career as well in financial centers. And I think that, I am a strong believer that financial sector plays a very important role in really contributing to the sustainable socioeconomic development. I want to stress on the socio element because, and which is also another motivating, the main motivating factor for me to be studying this master's degree. The social element is often ignored in the socioeconomic development, and it's not received the attention that it deserves, really. So what I would like to do is, well, I'm already being able to apply the tools and the insights of my program into the work that I do. And also my focus in the future, you asked about my career goals, is in impact investment. So this is an area which is so unique. And you mentioned there are interesting factors. I think there are lots of underrepresented communities that really drive social ventures and new social, ideas that are creating better or positive impact for societies and environment. So this is a very unique group. We're not talking about banks or institutions that are sophisticated and have the right infrastructure to be able to, go about developing their own ideas. We're talking about, in a lot of cases, more often than not, they're marginalized population, and so underrepresented communities, and their needs are very different in order to build these types of social ventures that create positive impact. So this is what I would like to do once I, go in depth and research more about it, learn a lot about it, apply as quickly as I can in my role, and even as we speak, we're talking today, and in the future, look at impact investments, really looking at how finance can create that positive impact on societies and the environment.
Super, thanks a lot, Akshu. If you allow me, I would like to speak about your career now. I know that at the end of December, you got a new role at the World Alliance of International Financial Center as head of member relations. And I'm very interested in if you speak about more about what kind of job it is and what you're trying to achieve at this position.
Yeah, this also, December has been quite a significant month for me. I started this role in December. It's a World Alliance of International Financial Centers, really looks at promoting collaboration between international financial centers, promoting exchange of best practices. And so it represents now, it's grown rapidly. It represents about 27 to 28 centers across 5 continents. You might recall, Ajan, going back to one of our Astana Finance days, it was a very young, actually a newly born entity, WFC. This is going back to 2018. So it has seen rapid sort of buy-in from the financial centers around the world. And I think really speaks volumes for the really buy-in from all financial centers to collaborate across different regions, learn from each other. So what that has meant for the WFC is, as it's grown at the 5-year mark, really they were looking at promoting further that collaboration, because as you grow, you need more capacity to really focus on delve deeper into some of the projects, which are important to certain members, not necessarily to all. So really my role is to bring further collaboration between members, looking at specific projects, for instance, looking at potentially creating new regional chapters. For instance, we're looking, Europe, WSE has its own Europe chapter or a roundtable, which focuses on a lot of common elements that are really at the top of the agenda for those financial centers located in Europe, not necessarily for all. And the hope is to do the same across different continents. So potentially even Central Asia or across Asia, African chapter within the WFC to really look at the challenges that are common, lessons learned, and then further sort of educate others from the learning experience of those centers. And then lastly, I would say really to look at promoting further bilateral cooperation between centers that are members of the WFC and also multilateral cooperation. So this will be my, at a high level, this will be my sort of area of focus. But again, on a daily basis, because it's so vastly represented, the questions that we get are so varied, and it can range from like the upcoming board meeting or to a financial center looking at alternative finance, and now social element is really coming on top of the agenda, which is close to my heart, and I'm really pleased to say that. So it can really vary from a very logistical minor question to fintech, alternative finance, social element, and the environmental, like climate change issues, and how really financial centers can play an active role as this sector evolves.
Very interesting job, and every new role goes together with meeting with new people. So I wish you a meeting with new, interesting people that will bring something new to your life. Akshu, as I said from the beginning, my program about discussion of the professional and the personal experience, because I think personal experience is also have a very important in every person's life, because it pushes us to achieve new goals. And have you ever dealt in your career that you've been underestimated or undervalued because of your gender? If no, it's great. If yes, how did you deal with this? Yeah.
This is, like you said, really goes back to, some of the reflection that you have to do. And I would say not necessarily because of gender. And also, I wouldn't even classify them as, the experiences as underestimated or undervalued. It's probably something that we all, and I am probably guilty of that as well. We all carry certain level of bias in everything we do. So it's potentially that in workplaces or even generally in life, we do have a lot of, some of them are conscious biases and some of them are unconscious biases. So, in terms of digging deeper, maybe like when I arrived in Kazakhstan, I was seen as, a wife rather than a professional, a wife of someone rather than a professional, even though I had lived in Qatar for 10 years, worked at a financial center, had very relevant financial center experience. But this is, again, maybe that bias that women sometimes carry. You're seen as especially if you travel as a couple, you're seen as a wife rather than a professional in your own right. And this, of course, it was short-lived. It changed very quickly. But I think what I did was just carry on and to do what I do, and what I know to do is just to keep my head down, work and deliver. And I think this is where, even when I moved, the whole reason was I was so passionate about the potential that the project has, and I still believe the enormous potential that the financial center has for Kazakhstan, for the region, and as an example for other parts of the world that are emerging economies that are looking at it. So this is what excited me, and this is what brought me to Kazakhstan. And so this is where I, of course, there were days when I would get frustrated, speaking of personal experiences, but then reminding myself about the objective at heart, or the objective, or just to deliver and let my work speak for itself. And like I said, it was short lived, and that changed very quickly. So maybe that as an example. But otherwise, I've been very fortunate. I've been, had an amazing career in the financial center, both in Qatar and here. Made some, like you said, have met some beautiful people, including you. And I'm so fortunate to share this friendship with you, Arjan. So I think in the course of one's professional journey or life journey, we do come across this, but I would really put it down to biases rather than, someone wanting to underestimate or undervalue. That's my belief.
Understood. Akshu, all of us have supporters through our career who hold our hand and help us to grow. And my question, who have been some of your biggest supporters throughout your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Without such individuals, it's very hard to imagine how even my career would have shaped. I think the advice I got at the right time, I think being at the right place at the right time, but also really up to the individuals to be so open, so generous with their time, with the knowledge and the insight. So I've been so fortunate. I started my career in India, and then moved very quickly to Qatar. And I've been very fortunate to have worked and met some phenomenal people there. And again, as part of this financial center project, and um, really progressed through different roles during my time there, because like I said, I lived there for 10 years. So went through different roles, and I I consider myself very fortunate at a very young age to have had that influence, or to have had that open door to some of these phenomenal people, to be able to go in and ask any question, not to be made to feel silly, because I was always told no question is a bad question, or no question is a stupid question. And so I have been really fortunate to have had started my career with a very diverse group of people. Very, I think most of my former bosses there had experience of more than 20 years, 30 years. So I was like a sponge absorbing everything. And I think that really made me open to, or I'm generally open to feedback. And also, what stood out for me was they were open to feedback. They were open to suggestions and my recommendations. Having had, I was a lot younger than some of my former bosses, so having had that culture of empowering and encouraging, to be not afraid to speak up or to voice your opinions, was really, really great for me during my career. And this might sound very simplistic advice, or one of the best piece of advice I received very early on, and this again goes back to Qatar, is this was like a project I recommended to improve efficiency, to create like a management dashboard at the time in Qatar. And one of my former bosses really encouraged me. And I think I was in my early 20s at the time. And he said, you know what, you're going to present this and recommend to the board. And at the time, it was my first presentation to the board. And in my early 20s, and very nervous. So I had another mentor who's a phenomenal lady, still works there. And so I was just, and she used to attend these board meetings. And I just wanted to get a feel for, how are these board meetings? This is what I have to present, in a week's time, or what's your advice? And she said to me, you've recommended this, you know what you're doing. All I would say is, if you don't know an answer to a particular question that you get, don't be afraid to say, you'll check and get back. And that really put my mind at ease, because, we can't know everything. And I think a lot of the times we carry a lot of pressure on ourselves to know everything, to be, especially when you're put in front of an audience, or put in front of a meeting where you have to present. I think it's a great sort of piece of advice that I received that really put my mind at ease. Just step back. It's okay. You don't have to know everything. You can't know everything. So just say you'll check and get back. And that, I think, took a lot of pressure at the time for me. It sounded very simplistic at the time, but I think that's what I've carried a lot. Yeah, so like I said, Aijan, I've been very fortunate to have worked and met some interesting, phenomenal people during the course of my career. And of course, since a child, my parents have been so supportive. The fact that I almost declined the job offer to go to Qatar at the time because it was an unknown entity because most of my family, extended family, I've been, have still do live in the US, UK, Australia. So Qatar was an unknown entity for me. And when I did receive that job offer, I really thought, you know what, I don't think I can, I didn't want to at the time. It was not very appeasing. And then my parents said, you know what, like the worst case scenario, you can come back, you come back home. And that really what made me accept it. And then, the rest is history. If I had not moved to Qatar, I don't think my career would have shaped the way it did.
Great, but supporters are those whom we actually know like for a long time and who are close with us, yeah. But there is some people who truly can inspire us and motivate. They're like a role model for us. And can you name like two, three, or even like one person that truly inspire you in your life? They can be historical people or who are living currently. And the main question, why they inspire you, or what the similar values you have in common with them.
This is a great thought because, the role models are so important. Yeah, for me, I think one person that really stands out is someone called Sudha Murthy. Now, for your audience who may not know Sudha Murthy, she's a philanthropist and author, and she's from India. She heads something called an Infosys Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organization that supports, various social programs for the underprivileged, for the underrepresented in remote villages of India. So just stepping back, why her is, we do, especially in this type of work where our social structures, our political structures, cultural structures are so complex. And these dynamics are so important to understand to be successful in, especially these philanthropical work. She's someone who I really look up to and I have done for a number of years, because she has really successfully operated and made such a difference in this environment, in such a challenging environment, and brought so much social good. She has this ability to understand and respond to these complex structures, as we operate. So I've learned a lot from her, and she's very inspirational to me. And there's an interesting side to this. So when I say Sudha Murthy, she heads the Infosys Foundation. Now, Infosys as a company Infosys Foundation is a not-for-profit. Infosys as a company is a tech giant. It was born in India in the early 80s. And I say other side because it was co-founded by her husband. And Sudha Murthy lent at the time, about $120 to her husband to start this company. And I'm sorry, it has really grown from there. It has touched a lot of lives, even as, within the tech sphere, within, creation of jobs in India. It's a global tech giant. And now, invested, if you think about it, and Sudha Murthy even jokes about it, she's invested $120 in the early 80s, and now the company is valued at, I don't know, 75 billion. Now, we're talking about Infosys itself. So she sort of jokes how she could be one of the best investors in the world. I mean, half jokes, because there is some truth to it, I think. But what I love about her, and you said, what values, similar values, and what really stands out for me is her simplicity. While she's got access to enormous wealth, can, afford almost anything money can buy, I think. But the simplicity in the way she lives, in the way she works, really resonates with me. And I think this is something that is so difficult, even for me, to follow that to the degree that she does. But I think this is one of the key success factors for creating so much difference, and to be able to relate to the people she meets in these rural villages. Some of them are need destitute care. These women are victims of, and children, victims of abuse and lots of other challenges, social, domestic challenges. A lot of them don't have access to healthcare, really in dire situation. So I truly believe that this simplicity has allowed her to relate to this underrepresented population, and the fact that they really it's made this whole Infosys Foundation create so much impact. And lastly, like, I want to end by this answer by saying, one of the things that Sudha Murthy always says, especially she says this is to the younger generation, the new generation, have patience. And this is something I think we forget sometimes. And she also says that if you chase money, money will run away from you. And again, this goes back to her simplicity. And she says that work hard and have patience, and success will follow. So this is where, this is what inspires me.
Thank you, thank you. I will definitely will find out more information to the Murthy, and we will discuss afterward. And my last question, Akshu, about the most memorable experience for you as a female leader. It can be like experience where you help people to grow with your support, or where you just gained the new skills that you didn't have before. So what kind of experience the most memorable for you?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think so many come to mind. And I would say not necessarily as a female leader, but just someone I think who's led teams. One thing that really stands out, and this, this was during COVID, and in a very challenging environment that all of us globally faced, I think. And this goes back to a new position that I had started very early on in the midst of COVID. There was a new entity, you'll know, in AIC that was created. So the demands were so high. And it was in the midst of COVID where it had hit, lockdowns had hit us. So I started this new position. I had started this new position, and a new entity was set up at the time. And we were really, had the responsibility to build the team. So I was responsible to build my own team at the time. And really looking fast forward to about 18 months from there on, there was a team, and there was a presentation where we had to communicate uh, all the work that we had delivered during the previous 18 months. And that to me was a huge like consolidation of all the 18 months of working in a very challenging environment. And what it showed and demonstrated to me was really the enormous work that we had done together, especially when we consolidated everything together. And then when I reflected back, even now when I reflect back, this enormous amount of work was done. And, like really a culture of friendship that had developed during this time was all done virtually and in very challenging circumstances. Now, some of them had big life events during COVID as well. Like some of them, a couple, like one got married, one had, one couple had a child. There were, tragic incidents in their families. Some of them were very isolated during lockdowns, and we worked through our laptops virtually. So I think this whole journey, what it showed, like in such a challenging environment, you can still create culture, a work culture, a empowering team, and mainly, I think, lead by example. I felt like, we were all working so hard. Our work pressures sort of increased a lot during that time because it was a new entity. I think I worked 18 hours a day during those days, and I know the team was doing that as well. So I think what the moral of my sort of experience for myself as self-reflection is, I think culture and empowered team can be created under any challenging circumstances. And leading by example is something I've learned from other leaders who I've seen, and something I strongly believe and follow that. So this is, I think, a memorable experience for me.
Amazing. You know, I just came to the conclusion when you've been speaking about the memorable experience that actually at the end of the day, the memory brought only by the emotion that you've got through the communication with people. Only people bring you emotions, memory, experience, and I think that at every job, at every relationship, at every studying, it's all about people. So thank you.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you, Akshu. I really thank you for your time and for your contribution today. And I wish you success in your career, at your new role, and of course, new life learning discoveries during your studying for master degree that you can apply further for the society benefit. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Arjan. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Um, Dear friends, please sign up for my channel, Her Way in Central Asia, and watch all of these amazing videos. Thank you.